Hey folks, welcome to Setting the Hook. Fishermen have their own language. They have different terminologies and expressions that they use, and if you're not a fisherman or you're just getting into fishing, you might not be familiar with these. So what we're going to do today is we're going to try to break some of these expressions and terminologies down so that when you're talking to a seasoned angler or maybe taking in a seminar at a sportsman show or watching a show on TV, you're going to have a better understanding and knowledge of what we're talking about.
Oh, it's a big fish. There he is.
Yeah.
Got him. Just when you think he's ready for the net, he turns around. That was just a greedy fish. That wasn't angler skill. That's probably my favorite part, when you feel that tap and you set the hook and you feel that solidness. But he's heavy. Tell he's been eating pretty good out there.
And we got ourselves a good salmon.
People travel all over the world for these fish. Let's do that again.
And let's face it, the Niagara River is a buffet for fish.
Let's get him back in the water.
Setting the Hook with Brent Bochek is brought to you by Fish Envy and Live to Fish.
Baits come in all different shapes and sizes and have different names to them. If you're a musky fisherman, you might be throwing a jerk bait. If you're a bass fisherman, you can also be throwing a jerk bait. When we're fishing in the Kawartha Lakes with Dave Chong, we're throwing jerk baits for bass.
Good size tiger muskies in here, which are fish.
Oh, there we go.
Absolutely beautiful.
Oh, there we go.
There's a smallie. Whoa.
Nice.
Whoa.
Let me get out of the way here. I see his head there.
Whoa. Good net job.
Usually I wouldn't take him from behind there, but
well, he was good.
Yeah.
He was jumping away. Here, better be careful of this guy here, seeing as he's probably still pretty fresh and there's a bunch of troubles around here.
But don't get those confused with the jerk baits we were throwing for muskie when I was fishing with John and Lisa.
I got the big old net here ready for you whenever.
Okay, this time, baby.
Go. Sorry, I didn't want to do him when he was flipping. Nicely done, sir. All right.
Made us work for that.
They sure did. You're keeping that fish in the water where you're getting the hooks out.
Yeah, this net is my live well. If you're a musky fisherman, it's really important to have that big net.
There it is. The magic bait of the hour. Right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is what we've been working so hard for.
Here's a typical bass jerk bait. As you can see, this one's about 4 or 5 inches long, and it's got a very small lip on it. In comparison, here's a 9-inch musky jerk bait where there's no lip on it. Let's first look at the bass jerk bait. Now I say it's a bass jerk bait, but you also catch perch and walleye on it. Hey, you may even get lucky like Dave did and catch a muskie on a bait like this.
There's one. Oh yeah. Here we go. I think this is a good fish. All right. Whatever it is, it's good. I don't think it's a bass. Yeah, I can tell you it's not a bass. If it is, we might have a Ontario record here. Oh boy. Oh boy.
That's got to be a muskie.
Oh boy. There she is. Oh yeah. There she goes.
Oh, that's a nice muskie.
Yep.
That's a beauty. That's a beauty.
Oh yeah, baby.
Dave, the pliers in my back pocket. Very important to support these fish. There you go.
She is.
Beautiful Kawartha muskie.
But you can see there's a little lip on her there. What happens is when you're pulling this through the water, you can just give it a straight retrieve and it's going to wobble back and forth. It's going to wiggle, look like a bait fish. But the idea of a jerk bait for bass like this is you're going to give your rod tip quick snaps. When I'm working a jerk bait, I like to work my rod tip really fast. So it's jerk, 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 jerk. And on that little bit of slack line, it's jerk, reel, jerk, reel, jerk, reel. So this bait's going to dart back and forth real fast Every now and then, if he gets enough slack line, it'll actually turn right around and face the fish. On a musky jerkbait, like this 9-inch Suick here, it's more of a dive and rise. So you're going to give it a longer pull. It's going to dive in the water column, then it's going to rise back up. I'm going to give it another pull. It's going to dive down in the water column, then it's going to rise back up for those couple seconds when I'm bringing up the slack line. So that's a dive and rise jerkbait. I take a bait like this here, and it's actually still a jerk bait, but it's more of a glide bait. So when I give this one a pull, it's actually going to go off to one side. So when I give it a pull, it's going to go back off to the other side. So it's going to kind of walk the dog kind of style. So it's a glide bait. It's going one side, then the other side. So as you can see, jerk baits come in a variety of sizes and different applications. If you're getting into musky fishing, one thing you're going to hear a lot about is blades, especially in the summertime when the waters are warmer and fish like to chase baits. These are handlebar blades. They're Canadian-made bait, which is really cool. And these are the blades on the front here, these big spinners on the front. When I first started musky fishing, we used to call these bucktails. They would have one blade on them, and then they would have deer hair on the back here, hence the name bucktail. Now, most of them have two blades on them, and then they have this flash boom, this tinsel on the back, which gives off a lot of flash in the water. The idea of the two blades on there is it's going to give off a lot of vibration when that's coming through the water column. So we call them blades because there's two blades on there. This here is a number 10, so we call these number 10 blades. These are number 8s, these are number 8 blade. So if you're talking to a musky fisherman, he's talking about blades. If he says double 10s or double 8s, he's talking about the size for 10 and the size for 8 and 2 because there's two blades on there. We're talking spoons. It's not something you have in your lunch bag for eating soup on those cold days on the water. We're actually talking about baits. If you live in the Niagara region, you're going to use a lot of spoons if you're out in Lake Ontario salmon fishing. You also use them on Lake Erie walleye fishing. But there's a variety of different spoons.
So we've kind of hit the doldrums here. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. We did a bunch of fish first thing. Now things are slowing down.
Wonder Bread, I like it.
Whack 'em tackle, Wonder Bread. Oh, I don't dig the hooks and stick them in my fingers. This thing has always been a good midday spoon. A lot of times in the morning we want to go with bright or with glow in the dark. And then as the day progresses, we go to our slightly darker colors, our purples, but for some reason, Wonder Bread from Whack 'em Tackle, absolutely fantastic spoon.
As I just mentioned about salmon and walleye fishing, this here is a Whack 'em Tackle spoon, also Canadian made. And the nice thing about this spoon is it's nice and light. It's meant for trolling. You're not going to cast this bait, it's for trolling. So as I said, it's nice and light, so you can work it at slower speeds, it'll give a nice kick, or you can work it at faster speeds and it's still going to kick for you. Now a spoon like this is meant for salmon fishing. You'll catch walleye if you're trolling them also on, say, Lake Erie.
Drop down again quick. There's another school underneath us. Control free fall.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want. Fish.
Good man. See? Sheephead, smallmouth, smallmouth.
Is it?
Yep.
There we go.
Nicely done.
Thank you. Now, Mark just mentioned that there were some fish down there. I dropped this spoon down there. I'm just going to talk about a controlled free fall. And you want to make sure you have contact with that bait. And sure enough, we hook up.
Nicely done.
There we go. Get up there. There you go. Get the hook out of him right away.
I like this guy.
There's a, maybe a little bit on the smaller side for out here in Lake Erie, but you know what? It's just chunky fish. We'll get him back in the water. One of the advantages of using a bait casting reel over a spinning reel when you're using a jigging spoon like this is I can actually have a lot of control when I'm letting that bait down.
Another spoon that we have is a jigging spoon. Now, these are great on Lake Erie for bass, especially when bait fish start to school up. They're very easy to use. You can cast this bait out, retrieve it, and it's going to give it a bit of a kick. But what they're designed to do is to drop them down to the bottom. As soon as you hit bottom, you're going to reel up maybe 1 or 2 reels, just keep it 6 to 8 inches off the bottom. And you're going to give it a jig, and it's going to flutter back down. You're going to rip it up, it's going to flutter back down. So that's a jigging spoon. The third spoon we have is a casting spoon. Most people are probably very familiar with a casting spoon. They're great for fishing for pike. It's a spoon that's maybe about 3/4 of an ounce in weight. You can cast it out and retrieve it. Now in the Niagara area, spoons are a really good option for casting off the piers early spring and late fall when those salmon and trout are in tight to the shore and coming up the rivers. One of the most common baits we have is a crankbait. This here is a number 7 flicker shad, which works really good for Lake Erie walleye. You can also get salmon and trout on it in Lake Ontario in the spring.
Gone all year salmon fishing, not reeling any fishing, so this is a little bit of a treat.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Got a bit of weight to it. That's on the, what, flickerman on that side, isn't it?
Yeah, flicker shad, yep. Flicker shad number 11.
All right. When we get that board here, I'll just back up a little bit and let you grab that.
Hey, with the walleye fishing too, you don't want, it's not like salmon fishing where you're pumping the rod or anything. It's
a steady crank, eh?
Steady, slow crank always wins the race out here for the walleye. I don't know which way you got this.
I wrapped it from the back.
Yep. Ooh, now my finger's stuck in there. There we go.
Yeah, good. There we go.
Big net, small net.
Yeah, probably a small net will do, but. Nice and pretty tranquil out here when you're towing with that electric motor. The wind's died off.
Yeah.
Nice and quiet. It almost feels like we're out north. Especially fishing this. Ooh, a few head shakes there.
Yeah.
There we go.
Battle begins now at the back of the boat.
Another 25 feet here. Oh, there he is right there.
Just a little guy. One good for the table.
When they start shaking, just hold still, eh?
Yeah.
There we go. All right. We got ourselves a walleye. Taking a while, but we got one. Just one hook in the net there. Yeah, so actually, you know what? A lot of walleye I've caught out here over the years, James. I've seen them on the back hook.
Yeah.
Took that flicker minnow on the
right front.
The flicker shot, I should say.
Front hook.
Right
Head first every time almost. Yeah.
Interesting. But then a lot of, I've been using spoons out here a lot too over the years. So.
Yeah. No, they love the crankbaits. I find almost 80% of the time they hit in the head first.
Okay.
Like those fusion hooks. Eh?
Right through that bone. Right through that bone there.
Cartilage.
Yeah, cartilage at the front of his mouth. There we go. Here, I'm gonna give you that, James. I'll let you get that back out in the water. And these walleye here, they make excellent table fare. I was told to bring dinner home, so I think we're gonna put this one in the box.
Yep, sounds good.
A bait like this, you can cast it out or you control it. So that kind of gives it a little bit of versatility. This one in particular, I'm gonna get about 12 feet when I'm trolling it. If I'm using on a lead core line, I can get a little deeper. If I'm running it off a downrigger or something like that, of course I can get it even deeper. So how a crankbait works is, see the lip on here on the front? As it's being pulled through the water, it's actually going to be dumping water off that lip as it's going through the water. And that's what gives it its wiggle back and forth. This one happens to have some rattles in it, which is going to send off a little vibration and sound in the water. And of course the silver sides on this is going to give it off a little bit of flash as well. So you got vibration, you got sound, you got flash, something that fish just can't resist. What we have here is a little bit bigger crankbait. This one's meant for musky fishing. You can also fish for pike with it, but it's unique in the fact that it's got 2 eyes on it. So it's got a shallow running eye up top here and a deep running eye down here on the bottom. So what happens is if I put it on this bottom eye here, the bait's actually going to tip up a little bit when I'm pulling it through the water, and it's going to dive a lot deeper. The shallow eye is going to run a little bit more horizontal, and it's not going to go down as deep in the water column. So when you buy a crankbait, look to see where the eye placement is, and that will determine how deep your bait's going to go. If the eye's up higher, closer to the body of the bait on the bill, it's not going to run as deep as if it's down farther. You may hear the term swim bait. But what is a swim bait? Well, when you buy a swim bait by itself, there's no hooks on it. It's a piece of plastic. These Berkley ones are scented, of course. These are Berkley power baits, so they got a really I'm not going to say it's a good smell because to me it doesn't smell good, but I'm sure to the fish it does. They're actually scented, which actually allow fish to hold on to them a little bit longer, giving you a better chance to set the hook. So with a swim bait, we're going to take a single hook jig head here. This is a football style jig head. What that allows is if my bait's sitting on bottom, it's not going to roll. It's actually going to be able to sit up. Kind of sit like that on bottom. So if a bass or a walleye want to peg it to the bottom to grab it, they can. Sometimes if you're using a rounded jig head, it'll actually roll over and the hook will slide to the side. So you want a football jig head like this will actually keep your bait from turning on you when it hits bottom. Jigs and swim baits are quite often you're fishing them close to the bottom. So that's something you might want to take into consideration. A swim bait is very easy to rig onto a jig head. So I'm going to take my jig head, I'm going to take my swim bait with the tail facing down, I'm going to hold it up beside it. And I'm going to see where I want the hook to lay. See how I got the nose of the swim bait right up against the jig head? So I know right around here is where I want the hook to come out. So I can see where that is. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my jig head. So this is the back of the swim bait facing the jig head. I'm going to poke that right through the middle, right through the nose of it. I'm just going to kind of thread it on there till, oops. Try to keep it in the middle of the swim bait as you can until you get it to poke through. Then you're just going to push it right up onto the jig head there. Oops. And when it's all said and done, you might have to play with it a little bit. You want that to come off of there nice and straight. And you're ready to start fishing. As you can see, swim baits come in a variety of sizes and colors. You know, these smaller swim baits work great on a smaller jig head. You can also hook them just through the nose and use them on a drop shot rig, as we did for perch. And you know what? These may be more of a bass and perch size here, but you never know when a bigger predator is going to come up and grab one. Point being, when we were perch fishing, after we're done filming, cameraman Dan, he was throwing a little swim bait on a drop shot rig, ended up catching a nice big pike. So swim baits work great. You can throw them on a jig head and retrieve them that way, or you can work them on a drop shot rig. If you're just getting into fishing, you're going to need a reel. I have 3 different types of reels in front of me here. First, I have a spinning reel, I have a bait caster, and I have a line counting trolling reel. Let's first take a look at a spinning reel. Spinning reel you're going to use when you're throwing jigs, swim baits, bass-sized jerk baits. They're designed for throwing lighter baits. The bait caster, you're going to throw a lot heavier baits with. If you're fishing for bass, you'll be throwing spinner baits with it. You'll be throwing flipping jigs with it. You can throw big heavy pulling crankbaits with it. Also, it's the type of reel you're going to use if you're musky fishing. The trolling reel, the line counting trolling reel, they're more designed for when you're using downriggers, when you're using divers, lead core lines, wire lines, stuff like that when you're trolling, so you can tell how much line you have out. Let's go back to the spinning reel. A spinning reel, you can see the bail. This is your bail here. It revolves or spins around where your line goes onto the spool here. So when you're using a spinning reel, you're going to grab your line with your index finger, flip the bail over, make your cast as you're going out, let your finger go of the line so your line can come out, flip the bail back over, and you'll be able to retrieve it. You can tighten and loosen the drag by this little knob on the front. A bait caster takes a little bit more work. It's just to get used to it so you're not going to get a backlash or a bird's nest. A backlash or a bird's nest is when the spool starts going faster than the bait is actually pulling the line out when you're casting it. And what happens, you get big ugly tangle in there, and they can be difficult to get out at times. So the level wind reel has a drag system on the side here, just a star drag. You can see I can click it here, I can turn it, I can tighten it, or I can loosen it off. It's got a thumb bar back here, so if I'm going to be casting, I'm going to my finger on the line, push down on the thumb bar, and be able to come back as I'm going forward, let go of the line, so your bait comes flying out. What you want to do when you're setting up a bait caster is, if you put your bait on, and you can tighten or loosen this little line, this little tensioner right here, and that's actually putting tension on the spool. So when you have your bait on, you can tighten this knob up a little bit, press down on the thumb bar, and then just start backing it off really slowly until the bait that you have on starts falling to the ground. When it hits the ground, you want the spool to stop. If the spool keeps moving, then you're going to want to tighten that up because that's when you're going to get your backlash. After you get accustomed to using these, you've been using them a long time, you got a good feel for it, you can loosen those off even more and use your thumb on the line there as you're casting. You can use that to kind of to slow your bait down or to slow the spool down so you don't overrun and get a big bird's nest. The line counter is very similar in the way to a bait caster as it has a level wind on it. This will be a low profile. This will be a round reel with our line counter here, of course. It has a clicker on it, so I click that in. When I'm reeling in, you hear the clicker, or when line's being pulled out, you hear the clicker. That's really important when you're, say, salmon fishing and you get a hit. You may not be watching your rods, but you hear the line start coming out. You hear it start, you'll hear that drag going out. You know you got a fish on, you look around and see which rod's going. Also, the drag's on the side here, star drag there. You got your line tensioner. If I want to let line out on this one, I pull back on the lever here, and that'll put my reel in the free spool. Click it forward, and then you're engaged again for reeling. Also want to make sure that as you're letting line out, before you start doing that you make sure your counter's at 0 so you know how much line you have out. One advantage having the line count on this reel for when you're trolling is, if I have 200 feet of line out on a diver and I catch a fish, I can duplicate that. I can put 200 feet out again. If I don't have the line counter on there, then I'm kind of guessing how much line I have out. If I keep getting hit on that rod, then I can actually duplicate that on other rods as well, so that all my baits are running in the same area of the water column where those fish are active. We are truly blessed here in the Negative Peninsula to have such a wonderful salmon fishery on Lake Ontario. All the way around the Golden Horseshoe, any time of the year you can catch anything from lake trout, rainbow trout, brown trout, Chinook salmon, coho salmon, and even the Atlantic salmon. One of the ways we get down to where those fish are is by using a diver. So this is a directional diver. I have a rubber snubber on there, and then we have about a 3-foot leader of monofilament line there. You can use fluorocarbon as well there. The reason I have a rubber snubber on there is because I'm using either braided line or I'm using wire line, and there's absolutely no stretch in that. So that little rubber snubber there just gives you a little bit of room for error. You're not going to pull hooks out of the fish the same. Salmon and trout hit very hard, and it just gives that little bit of give for it. So this is your business end. It goes to your bait. You can either have a spoon on there, you can have a flash or fly on there, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. You can have a meat rig. This part right here goes to your rod tip. That's going from your line going up to your rod. So you just click that in like that. When a fish hits, it's going to release. It's going to pop free, and it's going to come up through the water column with your fish fighting behind it. It's not going to give you any resistance. The cool thing about these divers is they're directional. If I put it on a 0 setting, it's going to go straight through the water column right behind the boat. If I put it to a 1, it's going to go a little bit farther out. A 2 will go even farther, and a 3 setting will take it farther out even. So once I turn that, I turn the weight one way or the other. If I take the weight and I point it towards the front of the boat, this diver is now going to go off this side. So I'm going to put it on this side of the boat. So it's going to take my bait down and away from the boat. So that's a diver. Now I was saying behind that diver you could have a meat rig. If you're just getting into salmon, you're going to hear things like meat rig, flash or fly, and of course spoons. When we're talking meat rigs, we're talking herring strips. So these are whole herring, which I'll fillet on the boat to make a strip out of them, or you can buy the strips already pre-made for you. So when you cut those herring strips, this is a plug that's a herring already. It's going to be very similar to this, that shape, that size. It's going to be a little flatter, and it's going to fit into a meathead here. So once I fillet the herring strip, I'm going to put it into here. I'll put it into the meathead, and then I'll take a toothpick. I'll just secure it right through there so that it won't pull out and go anywhere. Oops. Behind that, I have a bead chain, and then I have my hook. The reason I have the bead chain is it keeps my hook at the exact distance I want it away from the head of the bait. I don't want the hook to get pulled up into here, so I have a little bead there. I have the bead chain, and it just keeps it the exact distance I want away. Also, especially later in the year when salmon start to get really big, sharp teeth,
their teeth will end up on the beads if they take that bait deep instead of on the line. I'm not going to break them off or get bit off incidentally. So these meat rigs are usually behind a flasher. This is just a big old flasher, and what it does, it just rotates in the water. So it just sends off a little bit of vibration as it's rotating. It also sends off a lot of flash. And I will also give my bait behind it some rotation. When this rotates, the bait behind it is going to rotate as well. If somebody's talking about a flasher fly rig, they're not talking about a fly that you'd use for fly fishing. They're talking about a fly like this here, which goes behind your flasher. So you get your flasher, and then you have your fly about 2 feet behind it. When you buy these flies, there'll be a recommendation on how long on the package, how far behind you should run it. Some days a shorter fly will work, some days a longer lead on that fly will work. You just got to experiment and see what works for that day. Not every day is the same out there, so you just got to keep trying it out, see what works best for you, and then stick with it. So once again, this flasher is going to rotate in the water, and this fly is going to be rotating behind it. It's kind of going like this. And all that tinsel on there is going to give off a lot of flash and hopefully bring in a big salmon. Fishing can be a lot of fun, and the more we learn about it, the more confidence we're going to have when we're out fishing, and the more fun we're going to have. You know, it's not all about catching fish all the time, but it's about learning, enjoying the great outdoors, and having fun. So hopefully today we've been able to explain some of the different terminology that we use, a little bit of the language that we use for these different baits and different setups. Hope you've enjoyed it, hope we've helped you out a little bit, and we'll see you next time on Setting the Hook.